Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Sailing and Cruising the East Coast of United States podcast. I'm Bela Musitz.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Today's episode is a continuation of episode 49, where Heath Moldveen and I discuss his adventures this past summer when his boat sank at the dock during Tropical Storm Ida. And there's a couple surprise twists and turns in this episode, so make sure you give it a listen. It's really good.
Bela, this is kind of a nail biter, and it doesn't sound like it's going to end well.
But hey, Mike, before we dive into the conversation, I want to ask you a question. So what do you think about our logo?
Well, Bela, our logo. Do you really want my German-style very direct feedback, or maybe not?
Yeah. Lay it on me, Mike. Give me the direct feedback German style.
I think it looks very amateurish, and I think it could be a lot better.
Excellent. You know, I feel the same thing. And you know why it's amateurish?
Why?
Because I did it. It was a picture that I took, and I just put some lettering on it and name of the podcast, and that was it. And I clearly do not have any graphic design skills. After all, I'm an engineer, and those two things typically don't go together. So I was thinking it'd be a good idea to sort of get a better looking logo. And I was hoping that maybe some of our listeners have some graphic design skills, or maybe they know of someone who has some good graphic design skills, and they could recommend them to us. So we'd really like to try to get a new logo. We'd love to have a listener or someone that a listener recommends be involved in that process. So, reach out to us. Our email is sailingtheeast, that's all one word, sailingtheeast@gmail.com. And let's see if we can get a new, more inspiring logo designed. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, sounds good, Bela. I hope I didn't offend you with my very direct feedback, but getting a little listener help with this. And we got a little bit of a budget, right? So we can maybe work out a deal, huh?
Yeah, we sure can. Yep. Willing to throw some money at it.
Yep. So, all right. But I think let's get right to it and let's let the story play out.
So one thing I don't understand is if you're tied up at the dock, how can the boat go turtle? Don't the dock lines sort of prevent it from rolling? Or am I missing something?
So, right, that's a great question. So the boat, while still tied up to the dock, was it fully turtled? No, it was probably like, if it would have been 180 degrees, it was probably 150.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
it was still hanging, but
Got it.
But it certainly was upside down.
Got it.
More of the boat was upside down than right side up.
Okay.
Fortunately, where my boat was a deep water dock, which benefited us hugely that the T-top wasn't crushed or really bent or anything like that.
Yeah. So now you have the boat out of the water, and then what happens next?
So I had to collect all my cushions because as the boat came up, all the cushions went everywhere.
Right.
So I collected all the cushions, and I'll tell you, wet cushions are heavy. So pulled them out of the water a little bit at a time and kind of let the water drain. And then I just gave a quick pressure wash to the boat. The yard took care of that. Gave a quick wash down. And the boat, I'll tell you, Bela, it looked brand new. You'd never know it sunk.
Wow.
Looked perfect, which is incredibly frustrating. So boat comes out of the water. We loaded it onto the trailer. It's sitting on the trailer. We pressure washed it. And I, took pictures for the insurance to let them know. And I sent those pictures off to Seatow just to show they have to show that to ensure they get paid, of course. They need to show that the boat came out of the water.
Yeah.
And it was easier to have, because they brought that big boat, it wouldn't have worked for them to hip tow me over to the launch ramp, which is why the marina had to do it. But they needed those photos. So I took photos, sent them off. Insurance called me the next day and said, "So what's the plan?" And I said, "What's the plan?" The plan is you're going to send an adjuster, I hope, and tell me what the deal is. Do I need to fix it?
Yeah.
Or is it totaled? And And I made some mistakes, Bella. I made some mistakes, to be honest. I probably wasn't insured for enough. I didn't look at market value. I said to myself, my boat's in 1984. Well, it is what it is. Yeah, it's got new electronics, and yes, it's painted, and it's in great condition. The cushions are new, and yeah, it's had a bit of a refit. But the reality is that I probably wasn't insured for what I could sell the boat for.
Yeah. And recently, as we all know in the marine industry, since COVID hit, prices have gone up on used boats.
And that's what I didn't account for, right?
Yeah.
My boat probably doubled in value. So for round numbers, let's say I had the boat insured for $20,000. It should have been insured for $40,000.
Yeah. You know, that's interesting because when I got my boat insurance, and I've had boat insurance now several times, usually there's a fixed amount, right? I mean, you say I'm insuring the boat for X dollars, and that's what they're going to pay. Unlike oftentimes on home insurance, you can get replacement cost, right? So you get sort of, okay, it's a 2,800 square foot house, you know, blah, blah, blah. They'll pay the replacement cost, whereas even for the contents as well. But it seems like I don't remember coming across a policy like that in the marine industry. I just sort of recall.
Yeah, so I'll explain my policy a little bit. Just side note, when you turn to the right, it breaks up.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, side note, policies, right? So my policy, I was insured again. I'll just use round numbers. Let's say I was insured for $20,000.
Yeah.
That included the boat, the motor, and one thing later that I'll talk to you about, which just figure boat, motor, electronics. That's what I thought. Okay. And they did total it. Just the adjuster came out and they did total the boat. So just so we have that information now. On larger boats, well, so my boat, again, boat, motor, electronics, all under one policy. And that agreed value was what I worked off of, was an agreed value policy.
Yes.
And so not replacement value, agreed value. And no depreciation, which you pay a little bit more for agreed versus the depreciated value. In this scenario, perhaps it would have been an appreciated value, not depreciated, but it is what it is. The one thing that's not covered in that I thought I had separate insurance for, is the trailer. And a trailer for this boat, retail cost is about, right now, probably around $6,800.
Yeah.
When I bought the trailer, it wasn't worth that. But because of the limitations of production and metal being so much more expensive, steel's gone through the roof. Trailers are very expensive, and they've become kind of a commodity because they're hard to get. So this trailer was only, I think, 4 years old, which in trailer life, that's like brand new. So this trailer is in very good condition. And what I came to find was that it wasn't a separate product. That was wrapped into that $20,000 number, let's say.
Yeah. So
I was probably pretty underinsured at this point, now that I know what I know.
Right.
And shame on me.
So is what you're saying...
I probably should have done a bit more research on this.
So is what you're saying is if they total the boat, they're also totaling the trailer. So they're taking that away from you as well?
Yeah, it's one package, one bundle.
Ah, okay. Even though the trailer's nothing wrong with it.
Bingo.
Right? So it's rolled into that. It's rolled into the total. Right? It's not like you get to keep the trailer. Yeah.
Right. So that was it. So you might not get to keep, you wouldn't get to keep the trailer, right? So if they total it, technically it's theirs. They paid for it and they own it now. So boat's now back at my house. It took a month for the adjuster to come just because he was so busy. We lost roads. Literally roads went away in Portsmouth from this 9 inches of rain. Cars got flooded. lots of cars. I know I have at least 4 friends on the island that lost their vehicles during this flood. They're in a worse position than me, trust me, because they can't get a new vehicle
Right.
right now. So the boat, I had some decisions to make now. Boat's sitting next to my house, looks great. The one thing I did request when the boat came out of the water, I asked the insurance company, do you pickle the engine? Now, weird name for it. I don't know why they call it pickling. I'm sure there's some, 1800s reason as to why they call it pickling.
Right. Preserves things.
Basically what that is get all the water out of the engine and get it running. Make sure that it's running, run oil and fuel through it so that everything gets lubricated again, because salt water is going to corrode. And on the inside of an engine, that's not a good thing. Fortunately, I have a very good mechanic, Tony Marine, down in Middletown, Rhode Island. They're phenomenal, and they're friends. They brought the boat in. They said, bring it to me on Saturday, no problem. Now, again, boat came out on Thursday, so it sat for 2 days. They said, Heath, it's not a problem. There's water in the engine, and it's the air that's going to cause the problem. So as long as there's water in the engine, you're fine. Okay. Brought the engine to them. They took off all the electrical components. It looked like they were doing brain surgery. There were wires going everywhere to get this engine to run.
Yeah. So now,
within an hour, they had the engine running.
So now at this point, does the insurance company own the boat, or do you still own the boat, or where are you sort of in that negotiation process?
So at this point in time, the adjuster hadn't been to my house. I got a little out of order here. The adjuster had not been to the house. The boat had just been hauled out of the water, and I gained approval to go get this engine pickled. And so I made an appointment, and Saturday morning they said, we'll do it. No problem. I'll take care of you. And that there's a cost to that. So I called the adjuster again and said, there's the adjuster, and then there's the claims specialist. Called the claims specialist and said, hey, I'm going to go do this. Do I have approval? And they said, absolutely. You're trying to preserve our asset. And I said, that's great. Let me back up. With this insurance adjuster, I said, the agent, I said, let me back up and make sure this doesn't come out of my claim money, right? The value of the boat, I'm not going to pay $3,000 out of this, whatever, $20,000 number to get there. And they said, nope, not a problem. Me being me said, perfect. Send that to me. Email me that, please. I want it in writing. So they did. And I went off and got it done. So now the boat's back at my house, engine's running, engine can run. And that's where we're at now. Now, a week and a half later, the adjuster shows up. During that time, there was oil all in the boat. It was filthy. I pulled all of my personal belongings off. There were dead fish in the boat. There probably still are little minnows and other stuff that just ended up coming up with the boat.
Sure.
And stuck on the deck.
Sure.
And so I did what I could just to not have this smelly, gross boat next to my house. The boat was cleaned, and they said that was okay. So adjuster comes, and like I said earlier, they totaled the boat out and said, well, we own it. And I said, well, I'd like to reserve the right to buy it back. How does that work? And they said, well, what we do is we have a salvage company that moves these boats. And they'll sell them to other dealers that want to restore these boats. And like I said, my boat was one of those boats that they could do well with. So I said, get me a value and we'll go from there. So they total the boat out. 3 days later, a check arrives. Part of the agreement was, well, how much do I owe you to own the boat, to buy the boat back? And because I was underinsured, in my opinion, I really had no choice but to buy the boat back. And it cost me, again, round numbers. I don't remember the exact number, but call it $2,000 to buy the boat back. So what do I get? In buying the boat back, I get the trailer back.
Yeah.
I got the boat, the hull, I got the motor, and all the electronics that are ruined. So you get everything that you owned on the boat back. That part of it was no problem. They just take it out of the total.
Yeah.
So the next day, $18,000 is in my bank account.
Yeah.
Literally that fast.
Wow.
It was very, very simple.
Yeah.
There was no back and forth. There was no issues. So now the boat sits next to my house. I've since pulled the motor off of it. It's wrapped for winter, and I have to make a decision. What am I going to do? So I did some research. I reached out to my people in the industry, and I said, well, what's it going to cost me to get this thing back? Back to operating levels. And do you guys have a used motor, a rebuilt motor? What do I do? And, fortunately for me, I've got very close contacts in the industry that were able to help and guide me. They've been through this before. They've done it for customers. They know what's going to be. I've got boat builder friends, all of the above. Now, I've given you numbers as to how expensive these boats can sell for when they're fully restored.
Yeah.
To get my boat to go from the position it was in to fully restored is about $60,000, which is cheap when you consider that you're going to have a new boat. Or inexpensive, I'd say, not cheap, because nothing about it's cheap. Everything they do is going to be handcrafted and very, very cool.
That's right. There's nothing that's cheap in the marine industry.
I don't have $60,000, Bella. So the boat's not going to be redone professionally. So I needed to figure out, what am I going to do? Like I said, reached out to some contacts. One customer owns Freedom Boat Company. One friend owns Freedom Boat Company. And he said, well, I can sell you a motor for X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
Well, this is a Freedom Boat Club motor, which nothing against Freedom Boat Club. It's a Honda outboard, 225 horsepower, 4-stroke, great engine. It's actually the engine out of a Honda Odyssey turned on its side and set up for marine.
Yeah.
That's what this engine would be.
So you had your motor pickled so it ran, but all the electronics on the motor still ruined, right? So the trade-off is, do I fix my existing motor that's been submerged, and because I have to redo all of the wiring and electronics, or do I buy a new/used motor?
Right. So in talking to my mechanic, basically the pickling, because they have to put all these new electronics on, he wrote an estimate up. It was like $8,000. And I was able to I could get a motor for 12, let's say.
Got it.
A used 4-stroke motor with about 1,000 hours on it, which it's high, but it's not insane. Oh, and Honda motors, by the way, have a 5-year warranty. These motors were only 2 to 3 years old, so there would have been at least 2 years of warranty on them.
Yeah.
But they were, they're from a charter fleet, more or less. New to boating people, or people who were retired and wanted to jump on a boat. They pay a membership fee. They take the boat out. These are boats, I see them running around, full throttle all the time. A lot of back and forth, in and out of gear, because they're new to boating and their maneuverability's not as good. It might not be the best motor for me to buy.
Right.
I also talked to my mechanic about a rebuilt version of my motor. So my motor was a Yamaha 225 OX66, which is a 2-stroke Yamaha. These motors, as long as you change the spark plugs and filters, will literally run forever. Unless, of course, you put them in the ocean, and then they don't run. Yeah. But they're great engines. And I could buy one for about $15,000, $15,000 to $18,000. If I was to buy a new outboard, a new Yamaha 4-stroke, beautiful, quiet engine, fuel efficient, it would cost me $30,000, and that's not happening.
Sure. Right.
So I was kind of weighing out my options, right? All the electronics need to be replaced. That's $3,000 to $5,000. I have radar and a chart plotter and a depth sounder and a big screen and VHF radio and stereo. All that's got to get replaced.
Yeah. Well, you have $17,000 or so to sort of help fund, right? This rebuild.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm fortunate because I can do most of it.
Yeah.
I can do all of it. The only thing I would really want help with is the installation of the motor and rigging of the motor. That's what I would need somebody to do. The rest, easy.
Yeah.
It's pulling some wires. It's, installing electronics, which I did already. I actually replaced all the electronics. Well, this is the sad part, Bella. This year. The beginning of the season, new multi-function display and everything.
Yeah.
So that's the unfortunate part. So boat's still sitting next to the house, and I'm doing these calculations, and I kind of, low estimate $18,000 to $20,000 to get it done. Now, the thing that I didn't think of in this number, now I know we spoke quickly about the engine, right? So let's say an engine's going to be $15,000, and wire and new components is, the electronics package as a whole, let's say, is $3,000 to $5,000. So now you're kind of at 20 right now.
Yeah.
You still need a trim tab motor. The pump for the hydraulic fluid for my trim tabs. You still need battery switches, new batteries. But the hidden gem of money is, what do you do with water in your fuel? And how do you get rid of that? So how do you do that? You can borrow a drum from your buddy at the marinas and pump off this fuel with a special pneumatic pump, because of course you can't use an electric pump with fuel. Right. That's a quick way to blow yourself up. I'm sure they do it down in the South that way. I personally try not to do that. So I and friends said to me, we have a pump to transfer fuel. You can borrow it, and you can put it in a drum, and then you got to dispose of the drum. You can call a company like a fuel disposal or waste oil disposal company. In the end, that's a $2,000 cost.
Wow. And that's something no one ever thinks of, right?
What would you think, right?
Yeah.
If I was on a farm, I would probably let the boat sit. Fuel is lighter than water. Water would separate out.
Yeah.
And I would pump off most of the fuel and run it in a yard track. Well, not a yard tractor, like a truck from the farm or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Small engines don't typically do well with fuel that may have water in it, right? But a car can actually do pretty decent.
Yeah.
I don't work on a farm, and I don't have a truck to just run it through, and I'm afraid of messing up my vehicle. So that's not happening. So now all of a sudden you're at this like $22,000, and you're sitting here going, I don't know, what do I do? So the one thing about boats, it's always going to cost more than you think. With any contacts you have, it's always going to, and it doesn't matter. So figure another 10 to 15% on top of whatever you think. Now we're pushing this $30,000 level, and remember, I only had $18,000. Let's say, again, these aren't the real numbers, but let's say I only had $18,000 left to pay in, and I wasn't willing to put another $12,000 into this boat that I've owned since, God, I think I bought this boat 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I just, we're a family of 6. This is a 23-foot boat. Maybe there's another boat that we should be buying. Maybe we take a couple of years off.
Yeah.
From boating. What I'll tell you is this is a very, very unique time to own a boat and a very unique time to not own a boat. If you own a boat, you've got a boat that's appreciated in value. Never happens.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. If
you don't own a boat, you are buying a boat at the absolute height of the market. New boat sales, if you want to buy a new boat, here's the price. You can take it or leave it. And by the way, the boat won't be available till 2024. And that's where we're at.
Yeah.
If you want a used boat, all of the good used boats are going for top dollar. And the not so good used boats are selling for way more than they should be.
Yeah.
So I won't say I'm in a rock and a hard place. I could put the $22,000 into the boat and probably sell my boat the day after it's done for 30, 35 maybe. Or because this boat's one of these classic boats, Matan would call it a classic beauty. It's prime for restoration. And I'm on forums and different groups regarding sea crafts, and they're selling for a good value.
Yeah.
They're selling for a decent value without a motor, in horrible condition, that need everything new and a paint job and fiberglass work, et cetera, et cetera. So as my boat sits, I'll probably just, as much as my family, my children, my wife don't want me to, I think the smart thing and the prudent thing right now is going to be sell it as it is. And if I can get another $10,000, $12,000 with the trailer, of course, and you figure the trailer's worth 4 or 5, the boat's worth 8,
right.
10, just sell it as is and let somebody else have a project. That may be the best scenario for us right now. And because of this unique uptick in value of boats, we know that we're going to hit a ceiling and it's going to fall out. It's coming. Once this COVID era kind of gets past us and people start traveling again, everybody right now that takes a $20,000 vacation budget, put a down payment in and bought a boat or an RV.
Right.
Everybody.
Yep.
So that's why there's this funnel sucking all this supply out, or vacuum, I should say. I predict 2 to 3 years, we're going to see a lot of used boats on the market that are in really, really good shape, selling for less than they're worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my prediction. And I'm going to roll the dice, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So, we've been talking almost an hour now, so I want to start wrapping this up. So what words of advice would you give to a boat owner, who might go through an experience like this? I mean, you talked about 2 things. You sort of talked about the fuel, and that's the hidden thing that no one thinks about. That's going to be a bill, and that's something you can't really do, right? You got to hire somebody to dispose of the spoiled fuel. And then the notion of being underinsured, right? So you have an agreed to value for the boat, and you got to be careful because that agreed to value may be low. Any other words of advice or wisdom you have from this experience?
Yeah. Watch your weather. If you own a boat, watch the weather and be aware. Talk to your friends. If you think there's a chance that it could go sideways, even if it doesn't, it's always better to be prepared than not, much like you experienced with your boat. Now, it's a lot of work to do.
Yes.
My boat, it's pretty easy. A couple lines, no big deal. Tie some stuff down, no problem. Your boat, bit different. Take that time and do it to save your asset. Know where the wind might be coming from and try to plan for that. Now, you can't plan for every scenario, but I could have done better potentially here.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't predicted. This was not supposed to be anything. I think know your insurance and understand what is insured on your boat.
Yeah.
Do you have a rider for fishing equipment that may go overboard and never come up? Your engine, on these larger sport fish, a new engine could be $50,000 to $100,000 or more.
Yeah.
If the block cracks on that, you need insurance to cover that. So there are separate riders. The trailer was something I never really even thought of. I have insurance for the trailer separately, but that is accounted for in the total value of the boat.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know that. So part of this underinsurance was the trailer.
Yeah.
I think, it's a boat. They're constantly sinking. No matter whether it's a glass boat or a wood boat, these pumps just keep them afloat all the time.
Right.
So just know that and be insured fully and understand your insurance. I think that's probably the biggest thing for me. And the learning for me was I was quick to choose insurance at the time. And I stuck with this one company for the last 3 years. And I probably should have adjusted it knowing that the value was going up. And I didn't. And that's where we're at.
Yeah.
And then look at your options. Understand what the market's doing. Look at what boat you have and where you want to go. And I think while this is a horrible thing that happened, and it's somewhat tragic to the family because the kids, this was like their intro to boating.
Sure.
And there's a lot of memories. This is going to be a segue for us to do something else on the weekends. Traveling, hiking, maybe doing something off the water. The budget for owning a boat, this boat was about $10,000 a year. I now have more money to go spend on a vacation for our family.
Right.
So maybe we'll get to travel a little bit over the summer that's different than what we would normally do, where we just take the boat up to Lake George because we feel like we have to use it and do these adventures that way. So maybe it means that we get to go out west and hike in Moab. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it gives, there's budgetary money that was budgeted for the boat that now can be spread somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or saved, which is even better for me.
Yeah.
So, I think those are kind of the lessons I learned. I think overall it's a horrible experience and nobody should have to go through it. But if you do, just work the process and believe that it'll work out. It does work out. And while it's negative, there might be some really silver linings that you can pull from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're thinking about it the right way, and you're thinking about it from a perspective of, okay, if we do sell the boat, then we have time and some resources to do other things, explore other things. And that's always a fun thing to do with the family, is try out new things. Yeah. Super. So, hey, Heath, thank you very much for being a guest on the show. Another great lessons learned here. A lot of good information, just like on your paint episodes. And given the length of this, we'll probably break this into 2 episodes as well, a part 1 and a part 2. So all great stuff, man. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Yeah, one last thing, Bill.
Oh, yeah, sure.
We have a 23-foot Seacraft for sale. It's ready and prime for somebody to take their time and build it the way they want it.
All right. Well, we'll make sure.
Reach out, Facebook.
Okay. I will make sure I put that in the show notes as well. But say the boat again. 23-foot Seacraft.
So it's a 23 Seacraft sport fish. It doesn't have the motor on it right now because it's gone. So it's ready to be customized and built out however any new owner sees fit. And I'll be posting a listing probably in the next week or 2. I've just been traveling quite a lot, and I didn't want to post it and then not be available for people.
And that's on you said like a 4 or 5 year old trailer, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So it's ready to go. But we'll get there when we do, and hopefully the new owners will really enjoy it.
Yeah, very good. Well, thanks again, Heath. It's always fun chatting with you, and hope to see you up on the slope someday soon.
Looking forward to it, Bella. Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
Wow, Bela, what an interesting finish. That was clearly a bummer for Heath, but my philosophy on things like this. Nobody died. Nobody was injured. The financial loss didn't mean his family wouldn't eat. And also sometimes when bad things happen, there's a lot to learn kind of for him and for other people. So it was great that Heath was willing to talk about this and share some of these lessons with us. One of the things that I learned about this is that insurance is important. It made me rethink kind of my assets as well, that you really have to do your homework and don't make so many assumptions. And it's great to ask questions. Know what's included and not included in your policy. The second piece, is somebody who's not really a sailor or a boater, that everything in the marine world costs more than you think it will. And there's always going to be some surprises. And he clearly had some surprises, even for an expert like Heath, right? This is his life's work, right? It's his passion. And those surprises that he faced were really interesting for me to learn from. And I hope the listeners felt the same way. Final thoughts on your side, Bela?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really good lessons here. I think one of them about the insured value or the agreed to value is really important. And, it made me go back and think about my boat. And, I got onto Yacht World, which is sort of the place where all boats for sale are listed. And I looked around and jeepers, prices have gone up because there's shortages and a lot of people have purchased boats in the last 2 years because of COVID. And my boat is probably worth more now than when I bought it. And I think I'm going to adjust my agreed to value with the insurance company. So yeah, there's a lot of good things here. And, this notion of learning from other people is a good one. And that's one of the reasons we do this podcast. And I think that was one of the great things about having Heath on the show. Not only when we talked about bottom paint and his expertise in that area in the previous times he was a guest, but also here with the trials and tribulations he went through, not only with, how to get the boat unsunk, which that part seemed to go really smooth. And it was really kind of cool the way he described that. Those folks really knew what they were doing. And but then that's when the saga continued. Okay, now that it's out of the water and on the trailer, now what? Now what are you going to do? And having the insurance adjuster come out, having him pass judgment on whether it's totaled or not, and then okay, here's the amount of money you get. See ya. And then Heath's decision to sort of buy it back, to buy the boat back at salvage value from the insurance company, and now trying to figure out, okay, now I got the boat back. I either got to spend a lot of money to fix it up, or do I just sell it as is? And sort of, the things that go through your mind in that saga as well. So yeah, a lot of good nuggets here, a lot of good things to think about. And I thought it was a really good episode, and I really thank Heath for sharing all of that with us and our listeners.
Yeah, that was great, Bela. Lots of great nuggets, and yeah, just love the attitude too. Hey, something new for my family, a new approach, new experiences. Everything in life is twists and turns, and again, as long as nobody gets hurt and everybody's healthy and safe, anything's possible moving forward. So yeah, really cool. Thanks for pulling Heath back to do another set of episodes for us, and hopefully we'll hear more about his new boat and his next adventures in the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. I see him a lot skiing, so we will keep in touch. And he's my bottom paint guy, so as long as I have to paint the bottom of my boat, I'm always going to Heath for advice. So yeah, that's a good idea. I'll try to get him back in another year or so and get sort of an update on what happened to his boat and what he and the family, are they still boating or have they decided to do something else?
Yeah, I mean, that might be neat too, because I think most of our listeners or all of our listeners are boaters, right? And what happens when you stop being a boater, right? So even if he doesn't buy a new boat, it might be really interesting to hear his reflections on what life is like and what he misses and what he doesn't miss.
Yeah, that's a good thought, Mike. Yeah, I will make a note of that and make sure we do that.
What do you think? Should we wrap this up?
Sounds good.
All right, listeners, thanks for joining us for another episode. We hope you found the conversation today interesting and thought-provoking. If you have questions about what we discussed, please feel free to get in touch with us. Our email is sailingtheeast, that's all one word, @gmail.com.
And if you enjoyed the podcast, hit that follow button on your podcasting app. Hey, and if you know of someone who'd be a good guest for the show, let us know. We'd love to interview them. So hope to see you out on the water next spring. The boat's on the hard. It's cold. It's wintertime. And I'm looking forward to spring for sure. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. See you soon, Mike.
And from over here in landlocked Munster, Germany, auf Wiedersehen.